Welcome back to our 32 for 32 NFL preview series. This is the Goal Line Stand, and we are talking Houston Texans football. I am Michael Lipinski, joined as always by Brett Halpern right over there. That way. Follow us on all social media at GL Stand Show. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we are going to get into the mind of Bill O'Brien here today. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. As you see there on our scroll on the bottom, Bob giveth and Bob taketh. So, I mean, before we get really into this, has there ever been a guy that has been so divisive for an organization like that? What are they doing here? Like, he's winning games.
Yeah.
But it seems like every year there's a story how he's fighting with ownership and he's going to leave and nobody likes him. And ironically enough, this dates back to his time. He had this issue in Penn State. And granted, that's a whole different ball game. And I give him credit for what he did there. Is he just rub people the wrong way? What is it? I don't get it.
I think so. And he even had some of those issues in New England. There was those, he was fighting with Brady on the sideline.
Yeah.
It's, I'm sure we're going to talk about this more. I feel as if he makes moves to make them competitive, but in a way he's losing. It's like he's losing the forest through the trees.
Okay.
Right? Like, to use, now obviously I don't view them in these terms, but think about like a Madden term. It's like, I just arranged a deal. So overall, instead of an 84, we're an 86, where if you just kept going, you could have been a 90 2 years from now, but now you're really just, you're putting too many things off and you're risking the development of the team to try to win now in a way. It's very strange.
We're gonna get into it right now. It's a weird way of doing it. So I mean, here it is, 2019 record, 10-6 in the AFC and 10-6. They're the AFC South champs.
Yeah.
Acquisitions on paper. You look at who they acquired. Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, older, but still a kind of a role guy. David Johnson. It all looks good.
Well, particularly if this was 2016.
Yeah. And then you go over to who's left. Let's get into it. What do you? We can.
Yeah. So I think the big one there in terms of the acquisition. You can't talk about that acquisition without the departure, even though technically wasn't the same trade. So first, the Texans traded away DeAndre Hopkins, who arguably one of the top 3 receivers in the game, and got in return David Johnson and a second rounder. So think about when the Giants traded away Odell Beckham, they got a first and a third and Jabril Peppers. So again, and Odell Beckham was sort of known as a slight malcontent, right? He had issues. DeAndre Hopkins, though it turned out later on that he had issues with Bill O'Brien, this wasn't a well-known or well-documented thing. So how could you not get you couldn't even get a first rounder for DeAndre Hopkins? That's what I'm talking about.
It's really weird. It's just it's all head it's a head scratch. The whole thing.
It's why it's hard for us to capture like a word or a phrase to say, well, this is what happened, because a lot of these were like, you're just at a loss for words.
I remember when it went down, it was like, huh? What happened now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And look, so then they traded for Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a good player. I tell you, look, he got dinged early on in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. then came back, with the Rams and had a decent year. Then this past year, he suffered another concussion. And look, this guy is one hit away from really having to consider retirement. And that's sad to say because
It
he's a
is.
very talented receiver.
Right. And I don't know that you give up a DeAndre Hopkins for a Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, long term, if you have a
Long
guy like Deshaun Watson, that's your end game. Is you think that DeAndre Hopkins is such a malcontent, which he isn't, and you're going to bring in a guy who's one hit away from retirement, and then you bring in a Randall Cobb, nice player, had a better year than I anticipated last year, but again, this isn't 2016. He's only getting older, and I thought he was long in the tooth last year.
Yeah.
Then we get to David. So David Johnson was technically the piece part of the DeAndre Hopkins trade. David Johnson several years ago, I mean, he was everyone's fantasy football crush. He had an amazing year several years ago when the Cardinals went on that run to the NFC Championship game. Then he hurt his wrist. Came back the year after, had like about 900 yards rushing, 600 yards receiving, and then last year just he did not fit in at all with Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense. So it's just I don't know if he's the same player. I'm physically he's getting old. Look, he's getting older. So it just didn't make sense. Look, then the last name is from should be familiar to Eagles fans. Jalen Watkins. We're talking about a boomer bust kind of player. He's not to me as a Giant fan when I would watch Eagles games. Jalen Watkins either was in the middle of what I would call like wow defensive plays, or he was the guy that was getting beat to give up big play. There was no in between with him. It really was he was a boomer bust player to me.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment of it.
Yeah. And then in terms of the other departures, Deshaun Gibson was a decent safety. Carlos Hyde, it's amazing for a guy who's a decent running back, can never find like a steady home. He's always just traveling around from team to team.
Do you think he's asking for too much money? Is he a money problem guy?
I don't think that's it. I really don't. I just think he just gets lost in the shuffle. He seems to be the number one player to look for when your star running back gets hurt.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So, Jonathan Joseph, we talked about when going over the Tennessee Titans. Get a little bit long in the tooth, but he's still serviceable, so that's a little bit of a loss. The guy who I also think was a big loss was DJ Reader, who was really a good defensive tackle, nose tackle, took up a lot of space, was also able to penetrate a little bit. Nice compliment to J.J. Watt when J.J. Watt's healthy. So, and then when you look at their COVID opt-out, Eddie Vanderdoes as a defensive tackle, came from the then Oakland Raiders, was drafted out of UCLA, never quite lived up to the hype. Houston brought him in as a guy to perhaps replace DJ Reader or give depth to whomever would replace Reader. So it definitely is going to hurt the depth, particularly at the defensive tackle, nose tackle position.
Yeah, it's an interesting opt out there, and like that is what it is. What it is. We are very much on board here on this program that these guys can do what they need to do, and so we're not worried about that kind of thing. Let's get to the Texans draft.
Yeah. It's kind of a ho-hum draft.
Bill O'Brien?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, they didn't have a first-round pick because they're always trading away for different pieces. Ross Blacklock is a nice piece, which, again, going back to losing DJ Reader, I think this sort of offsets that a little bit. And he's definitely a guy who could grow. He was a guy who some people thought might even sneak his way in to the back end of the first round. So
yeah, it's a good when pick. You're getting it's a good pick. It's an okay pick for a defensive tackle in that position.
Yeah, Jonathan Greenard, I wasn't as high as him as some others were, but he was a third, fourth round linebacker. Charlie Heck is the son of an offensive line coach. So he's very good from a technical standpoint, just very limited physically, really stiff. So hopefully he can change or improve some of those aspects to his game. But he's a hardworking guy. So I think it's a decent pick. At worst, I think he becomes a swing tackle in the league. John Reed. Now, Mike, isn't John Reed the cornerback? He was the one whom there was that Penn State alum that took issue with his dreadlocks.
I believe that was yes, I believe you are correct.
Yeah, and by the way, which I thought was disgraceful. And John Reed, he's a good player. I think
what else do you expect from people in State College, Pennsylvania?
I know. I'm trying to be nice.
No, we don't have to. We're not going to get too much into it, but we are.
Yeah.
Oh, we just lost a lot of viewers.
No, well, yeah, I mean it's a mix of that, and I think that guy was just also just being a racist. We're not saying that all Penn State alum are racist. Trust me. But that guy's just an asshole. But so John Reed, look, he was a captain.
He might be saying that most Penn State alums are assholes, though. So
they could be, but they're not all racist. Definitively not all racist. Correct. That guy was a racist.
Yes.
So, anyways, though. John Reed was the captain of the team. He's a good player. I think this is going to be a core special teamer. Problem is, I don't know if you want to draft a core special teamer in the 4th round. You should get a little bit better value. I'm actually intrigued by Isaiah Coulter from Rhode Island. Every time I think of Rhode Island, my dear cousin Billy was an alum there. Always talks about anything Rhode Island. So I know he's excited for him to enter the league. But he's a really interesting prospect. Rams. Yeah, go Rams. Pretty uniform, by the way.
Very, very, very pretty uniform because they use the baby blue, like we discussed yesterday in our Tennessee Titans opening, where the Titans could have went to the baby blue. That's neither here nor there. We'll have a uniform episode after the season's over.
That's true.
Or when it's shut down.
Yeah, hopefully the former as opposed to the latter. Nevertheless, Isaiah Coulter is an interesting prospect, very athletic. I think could help in the return game. And I think he's also a guy who's very good. He's got good yak, very good yak. Yards after catch for those that didn't know what that meant and thought I was getting creepy or weird. So yeah, again, ho-hum draft, some interesting pieces there. But again, this is what happens when you start trading away. I don't think it's sustainable to have 5-player drafts year after year. You need to develop through the draft as opposed to trading and this wheeling and dealing. It's got to stop. You got to just slowly build through the draft.
That's how you do it. I mean, that's the NFL method. Yes, when you get to a point, you tweak a little bit and you can bring guys in. That's when you bring your free agents in. But if you want to be successful, you have to build through the draft. This isn't fantasy football, John Madden, John Elway football, 1989. Yeah, this is real world. 4 key questions for the Houston Texans in 2020. We were kind of just touching on it. How barren has Bob left the cupboard?
Well, I don't know if he's left it barren. Here's the best way to put it, in my estimation.
He opened a bag of chips, ate a handful of them, put the bag back in the cupboard, left it open.
That's a decent one. I was going to say, prior to some of the moves he made, it's like you opened up the fridge and there were a few Wagyu steaks there. Now you open up the fridge and now it's just like the USA Prime A beef.
That's going in a different
direction. Or the Kobe beef. That's what I was going to
Yeah. Well, Kobe beef's okay. Have you ever tried Korebuta pork?
No.
Since you were talking Wagyu, which is, Korebuta pork is very good. It's a Japanese pork thing. Very good. Great burgers.
Oh, nice. Well, I gotta check that one out.
So maybe Bill O'Brien took the Korebuta pork and just left regular pork.
Or instead, all there is Bubba Burgers.
Oh, I hate the Bubba Burger.
Yeah, well, So yes, and all there is now is frozen burgers. So it's not completely barren. It's just not quite as good, not quite as talented.
Which is crazy to think about because it was so talented. And you have a quarterback that is super talented and needs weapons around him to be successful. I mean, every quarterback does. But you're going to ask this kid to do too much if you're going to take weapons away from him. And he's coming off, he's a year and a half removed from a knee injury. You just can't put him into that predicament. It reminds me of RG3. when the Redskins just kept running him out there. I mean, obviously a little bit different. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry. The Washington football team.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize it. Yeah, it's going to take some adjustment with that. But yeah, he's. I think it's going to piss off Deshaun Watson too. There's reports that he's not happy.
How could you be?
And that's the one guy you want happy.
You want your quarterback to be happy.
He's the most important guy on that team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Question number 2: Can David Johnson have a career resurgence? We already discussed him. What happened when he was with the Cardinals, and a couple years ago he was superstar, new offense, not so much. Or is he just like every other running back that just hits a wall?
I still believe he can rush for 1,000 yards. And maybe I'm wrong. I just
benchmark anymore, or is it like, okay, he ran for 1,000 yards?
Well, he hasn't done that since that 1 year.
Okay.
So he did that. So he ran for like 1,200, but he also had like 80 catches that year when they went to the NFC Championship game. The year after, he hurts his wrist. Then he has 940 yards, and he also has like 500 yards receiving. So, okay, so if you want to use all-purpose yards, I think he could have 1,300 all-purpose yards. And I'd say, look, from my starting back, that's a good season.
That is a good season.
I do think he could do that. For whatever reason, look, he's only 28. So I have a hard time believing that what I saw that year when he went to the NFC Championship game, that completely disappeared.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things where it was odd the way the whole thing went down. Yeah, guys do fall off of cliffs, but not like that.
Usually at 30, 31, not 28.
Right, exactly.
So that's why I'm not saying he's necessarily going to have a 1,700, 1,800 all-purpose yard year. But I could see 1,300 yards.
Let's talk about guys that not falling off of cliffs, but are looking at bounce backs. Over under J.J. Watt, 12.5 sacks. J.J. Watt, for the record, has come out and said that this is the first time he's felt super healthy in, I think he said 4 or 5 years. 2016, he put a date to it.
Yeah.
And I go back to what we said in a previous episode. That's probably because of the situation you have going on here. Yeah. Yes, he has to train. He has to do it on his own. No OTAs, no organized activities. You're not going through that constant grind. Preseason's changed. You could have a healthy J.J. Watt here.
You definitely could. And I will say this is a guy who I think everybody should root for. He's just a great guy. In terms of charitable efforts and working in the community. Think about all the relief he raised after the hurricane. So I'm rooting for him. And I think, you know what? I'm going to go over. I'm always bullish on a guy like that. I'm always going to believe that he can do what he says, or he's going to, do the over, so to speak, until he can't.
I see him as a 8.5, 9, maybe 10. I'm going to go with the under. I don't know that he can stay completely healthy. I mean, he's been playing with the Shane Douglas elbow thing for how long?
He's been playing with that since I think he was a rookie.
Right. So there's all these injury issues. I hope he can. I like him. I like him a lot. I don't see it happening.
Yeah. If he's healthy, I think he can do it.
All right. Where is the strength of this defense?
So I guess if I believe that he's going to get over 12.5 sacks, I should be saying the front seven. I would say the absolute strength of this defense is the linebacking core. So you have Bernardrick McKinney, who's a really nice inside linebacker, along with Zach Cunningham. I think he's a third-year player out of Vanderbilt. Whitney Merciless is a really nice outside linebacker. Their fourth linebacker is just sort of like the other guy. Right now, I think it's Brennan Scarlett. That might be Jonathan Greenard, the third-round pick they had out of Florida. I think their secondary is pretty good too. I think this could be a top 10 defense. But I know normally you would say front seven or back seven, but to me, the middle four really is the strength of the defense. When you think of J.J. Watt, I think that the one thing is, can another guy along that defensive line create an interior pass rush? and have that kind of presence? And if so, I think J.J. Watt easily gets 13 sacks. But I like Gary and Conley. I think Bradley Roby's a good player. Justin Reed is a nice young safety. So I like the secondary too. I don't know if one shines more than the other, but those linebackers, I think that's where that's the key to that defense.
We will discuss this more when we give our predictions on our big prediction show at the end of our 32 for 32 preview series. Follow us everywhere on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at GL Stan Show. I'm Mike. That's Brett. Subscribe to this here program. Subscribe to the YouTube page. We are going to be continuing our 32 for 32. We traverse into the AFC North with the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens in the upcoming days. And then we venture over to the National Football Conference. If you like what we're doing here, drop us a line. Tell us what else you want to see. We really like to go deep into these things. Look, we're going to repost our preview stuff from the posts from the preseason, the draft stuff that we had on the Section 247 page. It's going to make its way over. Let us know what you want. We're here. We're men of the people, or something like that. People of the men. And we want to take care of people. Let them see whatever they want. XFL stuff, you got it. Arena football, we'll do that too. We can't get too much into the brain of Bill O'Brien. I think this has been enough for one day.
Yeah.
Until tomorrow, I'm Mike. That's Brett. We'll see you. Stay safe and talk to you later.